Welcome to Awaken Sovereignty, a solo cast on ascension, shadow work, empowerment, and alignment with your highest purpose. I'm Chris Pinckley, spiritual coach and guide for those moving through deep awakening, transformation, and personal evolution. Let's begin. One of the most important topics, in my opinion, of all time, and has to do with life in general, achieving goals, actualizing yourself, being creative, expressing yourself, and also for those of you who are spiritually on the spiritually awakening path. And that is the act of boundary creation. I can't tell you how important that is and how hard that was for me in my life to create boundaries. Creating boundaries has a lot to do with worthiness. In order to create a boundary around yourself, you have to feel worthy. If you don't feel worthy, it's very difficult to create boundaries. So worthiness and boundaries are intricately linked together. You might say that the ultimate act of self-love is to create boundaries, because that means, hey, I feel worthy enough to create time and space around myself that other people don't get to cross without permission. That's a pretty big act of self-love if you ask me. I used to have boundary issues and worthiness issues so bad that if I was walking on the sidewalk, I would constantly just get out of everybody else's way. And especially there used to be this weird thing where if there's some dude who's maybe a little bit macho or whatever, some sort of a dude on dude macho type of thing, and I saw them walking at me, I would always get out of their way. And I could always tell somebody had locked onto me. It's like they can unconsciously sense that you don't have worthiness issues, and they want to feed off of the power play of making you move. I mean, this is, this plays out in life all the time where people unconsciously want to feed off of power playing other people. It's just, unfortunately, part of the human condition. I mean, it won't be for too much longer, but on the 3D planet, it is. And so I would always move out of their way. This was my first lesson in boundary creation. This is just this weird place where, for whatever reason, I was guided to start here. There are other things that I worked on, but as far as real boundaries and self-worth, I was guided to start here. And so one day, I was tired of this and always kind of being intimidated and always moving out of everybody's way. And so one day I saw this dude, he was walking straight towards me. And I wasn't going to make it a macho thing, like confronting him and staring at him. I mean, I lift weights and studied, took martial arts and stuff, but, I didn't want to make it about that. I wanted to make it about the lesson. I wanted to master this. I wanted to do it without having to, because that's not a real boundary. If you have to, physically fight somebody every time, you're not creating boundaries. So what I did was I just stopped I just came to a dead stop in the sidewalk, people walking all around. And I just sat there and I stared straight ahead. And I didn't stare at them. I just kind of stared straight ahead, right? And I just stopped and I didn't move. And I just stared straight ahead. And sure enough, the dude went around me. And every time, what I would do is if I sensed somebody had locked onto me and they were going to try to, they're going to kind of bull rush me out of the way, I would just come to this dead, awkward stop. This dead, awkward stop. Now, keep in mind, this is decades and decades ago. This dead, awkward stop, and I would not budge, and I would just stand and I would just stare straight ahead. And they would go around me every single time, right? And keep in mind, I wasn't being confrontational. I wasn't staring them down and being macho. I was just staring straight ahead in a very neutral, but, intense way, right? And here's what happened. Eventually, it didn't happen anymore. People didn't do that to me anymore. And it wasn't that they were doing something to me, it's that they were feeding off of my lack of worthiness. And so now I was putting out a new signal, and the new signal is, I'm worthy of my own space on the sidewalk. I'm worthy of having a place in this world. And it might seem like silly that I had to go through all that, but many of you know how hard it is if you don't feel worthy to create boundaries for yourself and to feel worthy. And I literally, years later, I would realize, even after the lesson, I didn't fully realize how profound it was, but I would come to realize, wow, I didn't feel worthy of having a place in the world. It was just insane. And this is also a lesson on how sometimes the outer cultivates the inner, and why you can't, you don't want to spiritually bypass physical life lessons, because those are what sometimes are needed to level up. In this case, I had to confront it in the physical, right? I couldn't just meditate and have boundaries and love myself and have boundaries. I had to physically confront it. So here are the 4 steps or 4 elements of boundary creation. And I've kind of broken this. Are really 3 steps, but I've added a 4th because it's something that you need to be ready for, right? Now, the first step is the big one, and that's knowing that it's okay to create them. And here's how that translates. Knowing it's okay to tell somebody no, no thank you, not right now, or hey, go F yourself. And hey, I'm sorry to be kind of blatant like that. And maybe a little crass for some of you. I apologize for that. But some of you need to learn how to say that. The pendulum can't just go right to the integral middle. You have to swing. If you are a really, really timid person with no boundaries, you will probably have to the pendulum will have to swing all the way to the other side first before you kind of come back to the integral middle. It's like my example. Like, I had to go through this extreme thing, right? I couldn't just start to sort of like halfway it and maybe just like walk a little slower or kind of not move. I had to come to an absolute dead stop and know in my mind, I'm not budging, and confront that fear within me that, somebody is going to be angry at me for not moving. And so I had to do something kind of extreme. So for a lot of you, you have to learn how to tell somebody to F off. Now, I'm not saying that everybody needs to go out and do that. I'm saying that you need to be ready to tell people, no, thank you, in whatever form they need to hear it from you in order for them to know that you're serious. And some of you needs to be more extreme, some of you less, right? But you need to know that it's okay to do that. So step number 1, lesson number 1, it's okay to say no, no, thank you, not right now, maybe later, or go F yourself. Again, apologize. I'm sorry. It's kind of a sorry, not sorry type thing. Step number 2 is to create the boundary. So this is the hardest one. I mean, the first one is the trickiest one. I should say. Step number 1 is the trickiest one because a lot of people just don't believe that it's okay for them to do that, and a lot of this because they don't feel worthy enough. They don't love themselves enough. Step number 2 is creating the boundary. Once you know step number 1, actually step number 2 can be easier. But that's actually, hey, committing to it and saying no, not right now, no thank you, maybe later, or hey man, go F yourself, right? So step number 2 is creating the boundary. You've got to do it. You can't skip it. Step number 3, this is often the hardest part. I don't know. I keep saying which one is the hardest part, but I think each one could be the hardest part for a different person. Let me just say that. But be okay with the fallout. Be okay with the fallout. The fallout, what that means is a lot of people are going to be upset at you. For a lot of you, you may have a lot of codependent relationships, and those are relationships where you do things with people that you don't want to because you get something out of it, they get something out of it, but it doesn't really serve you, but you kind of keep it going. And so a lot of you, this is going to be breaking codependent relationships. It's pretty difficult because the fallout could be, hey, people could, kind of threaten you, emotionally blackmail you. Well, you don't hang out with me, we're not going to be friends anymore. And that's overly simplistic, but it can kind of happen. People can start to distance themselves. They can not hang out with you anymore. If you don't want to go out on every Thursday night or whatever, and you start not going to the happy hour, then they might start emotionally blackmailing you. And well, I don't like who you're becoming, or, you really don't care about anybody but yourself, and all the kind of BS things that people, in codependent relationships, that are getting broken up with out of those relationships by somebody who's creating boundaries can say. And it might not be your intention to not hang out with this person anymore. You just don't want to engage in certain things that don't serve you. And they don't serve you, and they're holding you back from becoming who you want and need to be in order to live the life that is more fulfilling for you. And so you need to be prepared for the fallout. You need to be okay with whatever comes back to you, right? And that does lead to number 4, and I sort of just said that, which is that they don't want to be your friend anymore. So number 3 is the fallout where you create the boundary, and somebody might yell at you, or they might become aggravated or aggressive or whatever. So you have to be prepared for the fallout, whatever that's going to be. And then number 4 is you have to be prepared if this person doesn't want to be your friend anymore, or they don't want to hang out with you, or they don't want to see you anymore. You have, you have to be okay with that. You have to be absolutely okay with that. Because if it was a purely codependent relationship, but this is maybe somebody that you care about or you love, there's one of two things will happen. Either they will disappear from your circle forever, in the extreme, and you have to be okay with that, because that means that they don't have your highest good in mind. If it doesn't serve their agenda and they don't want to be with you because of that, then they don't really care about you. Or number 2, this has happened a lot, is that person will leave for a while, and when they come back, they'll come back as an evolved version of themselves that's able to engage with you at a higher level. And so your boundary can actually help them to start to take their life more seriously as well. Sometimes when you create a boundary, you help the other person as well, right? And the corollary is that if you don't create the boundary, you're kind of enabling them to stay stuck with you. Although that's not really your agenda here. Your agenda here is to create the boundary for yourself because you want to build worthiness, and you want to show yourself that you love yourself, because that's what boundaries really are doing, is they're showing parts of you that you value yourself, right? You're showing yourself that I value myself. I love myself enough to create this boundary, because I need these boundaries if I want to move forward in life, if that makes sense. So I think that'll do it for this episode. Boundaries, the importance. So I'll say, hey, take care, have a good one, and we'll talk to you soon. If this episode resonated with what you're moving through, and you're interested in private spiritual coaching around awakening, emotional integration, shadow work, relationships, boundaries, or building a soul-led life and business, email me directly at rc101coaching@gmail.com with the word coaching in the subject line. You can also find the contact link in the show notes. Follow Awaken Sovereignty for future episodes, and share this with someone moving through their own awakening. This is Chris Pinckley. Stay awake, stay aligned, stay sovereign.